Welcome. This is Impact 2020. My name is Nathaniel, and this is our ongoing conversation where we talk about issues related to social justice, religion, race, the whole gambit. I thank you for joining us again for another opportunity to continue the conversation. A reminder: this is a conversation. This is a back and forth. This isn't a one-way street. Please feel free to type your questions and your comments into the comments section. All right. Before we start, this is not our topic, but we have to acknowledge that last year, May 25th, 2020, that is when we had the death of George Floyd. So it's been exactly, for those of you who are looking at this live, today is the 25th. It's been exactly 1 year since that event. And so, 46-year-old man, as we all know, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, was murdered by a police officer who decided to keep his knee on his neck for between 8, 9, depending on who you've heard, minutes, while he basically begged for his life. And so we just have to acknowledge that since then, the world has drastically changed in the sense of you can't unsee what you saw. And some things have changed, even on a corporate level, where we've had just some movements as far as corporations now acknowledging that Black Lives Matter, corporations putting money behind some of those words, and even corporations doing new things. What they talked about, one of the big buzzwords is now diversity and inclusion, to try to help that diversity inside of their businesses, and also try to help the people that they have understand the differences between different races and different ethnic backgrounds. And so there's been numerous changes in the corporate world, and even when we look at politics or the law, where now they're pushing towards more police reform. There's a bill that we're going across now in our Congress. And so it's been a year. It's been a tough year. It's been an eventful year. It's been a year where a lot of things have gone on, but it's been a year since then. And so we just want to acknowledge that, yes, it's been 1 year since his passing. All right. Today we're going to talk about something a little different. And feel free to chime in if you want to, a little bit different from our normal type of topic, but then it fits in as well. What we're talking about today is HBCUs. We're talking about historically Black colleges and universities. For those of you who don't know or who may not be familiar, historically Black colleges and universities throughout the nation have been places where African Americans, Black people, have been able to go over history to be able to get collegiate education. Started when we couldn't go to the majority institutions or the white institutions. And so there were efforts to put together these colleges, these institutions that most are progressing to universities that we were able to go to, that Black people were able to go to get an education. And over the years, numerous leaders, educators, politicians, doctors, lawyers, teachers, engineers, everything has come out of these schools. Some of our best and brightest, when we talk about Black and brown people, have come out of these universities, these colleges and universities. And as what the pandemic has done is that it has brought some attention back to these schools. We looked, and over the past year, we had someone, Deion Sanders. I don't know who knows him or who doesn't, but you should. He's a Hall of Fame football player. He won multiple Super Bowls. He played for numerous teams. He was a quarterback. He decided that he was going to be the coach of Jackson State, a historically Black college and university. And Eddie George, who's also a Hall of Fame NFL football player, is now going to coach at Tennessee State. We've had our vice president, who is Kamala Harris, who went to Howard University and graduated from there. We've had Ja Morant, that is a new basketball player, NBA basketball player, who was Rookie of the Year in 2019. He came from, I want to say, Jackson State as well. So we've had numerous people who are starting to pop up, who not starting to pop up. We've had numerous people over the years who have gone to these universities, and we're showing that there's still value there, especially value for people of color. And then, we could go on and on. There was another guy, Ben Wallace, who went to Virginia Union University, was just inducted into the National Basketball Association's Hall of Fame. And so, there's been a resurgence and a research and a discussion of the importance of HBCUs. And so the discussion that we're going to have today is basically HBCUs. Are they still needed? Are they still valuable? Why are they valuable? And as a social justice issue, what is the importance of HBCUs? HBCUs. And so that's where we're going today. That's where we're going today, the importance of HBCUs and their existence. And so as we go in, one moment. One of the things that I'll tell you a personal story about myself. So one of the things about HBCUs, growing up as a young man, you sit back and you look at colleges and universities, and as I was growing up, it was always an emphasis on just colleges as a whole, but also on going to a place where you would get a good education. And so when you look around, what is a good education? Is a good education just knowing, numbers and, different topics, different subjects? Or is a good education the holistic approach of where you're getting not only an education as far as, scholastic, but also education in life? And so an education in who you are, education in culture. Because one of the things that a lot of young people say is that they find themselves. And so I know that when I was picking schools, and I ended up going to an HBCU, is that that's one of the important things that I looked at. And even we have an aligned person like Bill Cosby, who we really beat up on in the past couple of years. He was very instrumental in a lot of young people in the 80s and 90s taking a look at HBCUs, especially with his program, A Different World, and his constant advocacy towards that. And so you had people like that really pushing along HBCUs. You had a lot of people in the community. Where I'm from, you had a lot of politicians, teachers, people in the ministry who came from HBCUs. And that was one of the things and the pushes that put people along there. And so that's one of the reasons that I know that I went. But as we go on, let me hop on. We got a question. Truth be told, most of our major leaders are products of HBCUs. And that's a good point. And so the question is why? We look at some of our leaders, and you look at these great schools, and you're like, oh man, you got all the Ivy League colleges, and then you sit back and you have all of these great prestigious schools where you can pay hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yet these little tiny universities, these little tiny colleges, keep producing some of our great Black leaders, some of our great brown leaders. You even look at somebody, Supreme Court Justice, Thurgood Marshall, HBCU product. And you sit back and you're like, what? Why? How do you get, so the question is, why is that? Why is it that for us, some of our biggest and brightest have come from these schools and universities? It goes back to there has to be value in the relationship with other Black people, being taught by people who care specifically about you and your needs. And there's value in knowing from whence you came and where you come from. I think that there's a different type of motivation that you get when there's a different type of motivation that you get when you know that people have come before you and laid out a path and a plan for you, versus you just going along with the general group. For example, here in Virginia, for those who may not be looking here, we have the University of Virginia. Great school. It is. I mean, I'm not being facetious at all. Great school. But this school was built um, by slave owners. This school was put together by individuals who participated, you know, in the enslavement of Black people. And so as you go there, and as you go from one hall to the next, where they're named after people who owned slaves, when you go there and you see that this beautiful campus was built on money from people who use slave labor, when you go there and you realize that some of the places on the school were built by slaves, it's not really that this place was built for you. You just kind of happen to be there. And so for me, there's a different type of, I don't know, it's a different type of situation when you know you're somewhere that was built for you by people who knew one day, you know, not that you, but one day you'll be here. Your folk like you will be here, and we want to set a place together for you so that you can succeed. And I think that's an important factor in motivating young people. But also, we always talk about, man, our school's going to teach our kids about our history. What you do know is that when you go to a HBCU, you are going to have the opportunity to learn from your history, whether it be in the classroom or around the classroom. And so that may be something that's missing out on some people. Let's be real, schools aren't going to teach it. Especially grade school, they're not teaching it. There are fights now in Texas. They just decided that they're not going to teach critical race theory. Now, let's be honest. Most people don't even know what critical race theory is. And so basically their argument is, hey, we're just basically not going to teach race, or we're going to try our hardest not to teach the negative parts of race, because that's what a lot of people think critical race theory is. And so as they push to make sure that you know that America is great, that it was established by great people. There were some bumps along the way. We killed a couple of them, but we're great. They're not going to look at the actual history of what has gone on, the good and the bad, the whole total analysis. And so what that means is, as a Black person, you're not going to get your history lesson about you and your culture from the school. And it's unrealistic to think that they should do that anyway. You know, if I was, I don't think anybody else expects that either. As a Black man, I don't want to sit back here and let's be frank. I don't want to sit back here and there's an Asian man trying to teach me about African American history. All you can tell me is what you saw in the book, you know, where versus an educational process from people who may look like me. And there's a difference there. HBCUs, let's go back to the value there. So we can teach our history, but then you're also with people who may have had similar experiences than you. And the way that I always look at it is, I love the fact that, you know, people sit back and be like, well, you need to be able to go and make connections with other folk. You need to be able to go, and the world is diverse, so your education should be diverse. Great, I got you. That makes 100% sense. I love it. For most people nowadays who are sitting back looking at a college education, you don't look at it in a one-stop shop. Hopefully you do, and you can have it that way, and then you can go on to a great career. But for a lot of people, a college education is not what it used to be. You have to get an undergraduate degree, and then you're probably going to have to get a graduate degree. Because nowadays, that undergraduate degree is just, it's easier to get. There's more access to it. It holds a little bit less weight. And so my thing is, hey, if you're going to go, you want to be a doctor, HBCU for undergrad, and then get your nice foundation, and then go wherever you want to go for medical school. You want to be a lawyer, HBCU for undergrad, get your nice foundation, and then go wherever you want to go for, you know, your law degree. What it does is it gives you the best of both worlds. You can make your connections that you think you need to make. You can have your foundation that you need to have. And so it's not that everyone needs to go to the HBCU. It's not for everyone, but I think that they're important and they need to be around. And you know, one of the things I've also heard from young parents, and especially young parents who So you have a child that's getting ready to go to HBCU, and they have some hesitation about not being able to fit in. And I've truly heard this. I've heard some parents say, well, matter of fact, this was just recent. I heard a parent say that their child is nervous that they're not going to be black enough to go to the institution. And it's because they grew up upper middle class. They went to a very diverse school where they were black people were a significant minority in their school all through their life. And so they feel like, oh man, I'm not gonna be ready. I'm gonna go out here and it's gonna be some brothers and some sisters at this school, and I'm not gonna be ready for that. Well, you may not be, in the sense of you're gonna be culture shocked and you haven't been around that many black people, but that's, if you have a child like that, or if you are someone who thinks like that, that's probably not going to be the case, of the sense of you're not ready. You're just not ready from the shop. But people are people. I mean, we're just some black people, and so the value of the school is just the rich heritage. I remember I went to school. We did everything. You have the wonderful black bands. You have fraternities and sororities. You have different organizations. You just have an opportunity and a breadth of different things that you can touch on. We have a comment right here, and we're also going to bring in our guest, and so we'll get him to address the comment. How we doing, Steve?
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening.
All right. We're gonna hop right on this comment as we're talking about HBCUs. There's a claim that they want to dismiss classes and references to how whites treat blacks because young whites begin to have a problem with their heritage. And so that's into response. Like one of the things, as we were talking, one of the things that we look at with HBCUs is that there's an opportunity to learn about your heritage because you're not learning that. You're not going to learn about it in school. And even as more and more they try to cancel it out under the guise of critical race theory, they want to push away the teaching of Black history because of some of the negative things that happen in the history. You don't want to make people feel bad. I don't want to make little Timmy feel bad. So let's push away and dismiss some of this heritage. I think that's what's also being said here in the comment. So, question for you: touch on the fact that this comment here, where we're talking about moving away from acknowledging race, maybe in the classroom level, and then
I'm not sure what happened. I lost you. You still there? Think I lost you, Nathaniel. Am I still here? I'm not sure.
all right. Oh, you go ahead and continue, Steve.
Was that on me? I'm sorry.
No, that was a little bit on us. We had some technical. Okay. But go ahead and you can go ahead and continue.
Okay, cool. Well, in terms of getting away from the heritage, let me try to remember. I want to answer correctly. So it's being a part of a HBCU school. It's not only do you learn like in class about the history of the African American culture and lifestyle, but you learn from others as well.
Hmm.
You learn from other African Americans that are at the HBCU. So it's not just an in-class thing, in my opinion. You're learning every aspect of the culture of African American life in America. You have different economic friends that you meet, high status, mid status, low status. Then I mean, it's a melting pot of African Americans, basically. So it's just not in the classroom. But I do feel that it's important that I learned, I had quite a few classes. I mean, in every college now in America, you have an African American history or studies class. And you got to think about, where did that come from? Why is that class in every university now? And it kind of, if you think about it historically, it started in the HBCUs. Not only did that class start in the HBCUs, but it's a cultural shock as well. So if the University of Virginia was looking at Virginia State Universities or Norfolk State Universities curriculum, like, oh, maybe we should talk about this too, because since the birth of America, it's been progressing in terms of how you look at how it looks at others and how it treats others. So, of course, it's been taking a very long time, but people, all realms of colleges and universities pretty much have that in their curriculum some way. If it's in history, it's in education, it's somewhere, and it pretty much is rooted and began with HBCUs. I'm not sure if I answered that question or not.
You did. You kind of touched on this question quickly. And you hear the response from people, well, black people can go to any school now they want to. We've got affirmative action and we've moved so far. We had a black president. So why do we still need HBCUs? What would you say in response to that?
HBCUs are extremely important, not only for the African American cultural experience, but it's important for everyone. And to say African Americans can go everywhere to learn now, it's true. And it should be that way. But because that has actually happened, HBCUs have actually been wounded or damaged, if you will, since I believe the 50s, late 50s and early 60s, when integration started. Those who wanted to go to these PWIs wanted to, because they think it's a better way of learning. It's really not, in my opinion. And we've been hurt by it. Athletics, all the big athletes started going to the D1, the PWI D1 schools, and left HBCUs. And now you can look at the NCAA, you can look at the Final Four. Whereas if the culture didn't change and those guys stayed at the HBCUs, it will be a totally different way we look at college sports. But integration and moving forward, all people should have a option on where to go. But I want to say this one really quick. My brother and I, we had really, really weird arguments about this exact thing when I was getting ready for school. And one thing my brother would always say, man, because he went to Old Dominion University. And I don't know why, but he totally left the train of Wilder learning, because father went to Virginia Union, mother went to St. Paul. And I went to Johnson C. Smith. So everybody's, a HBCU person except for him. And the dumbest thing he said is actually humorous, but we argued about it like almost over 20 years ago. Man, I got to learn from the white man. I got to learn from the white man.
Yeah.
What? The whole time I'm like, when I was in, this came from, when I was in school, I'm like, man, over half my professors are white at HBCU. What are you talking about? So, it's just silly conversations like that, because of course it is a different cultural experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's a situation where, people have their own opinions. And I think HBCUs have been a little wounded by that. And we still are kind of feeling the shift when integration started, because we can go to school everywhere. Some people say, why are we still needed? but we are still needed because, I mean, because of what it produces. You can look at yourself, you can look at me, we're outstanding citizens, and, that's what HBCUs do.
Yeah, you look at the comment down here, 1+1 = 2 regardless of the school.
Yep.
That's factual. At the end of the day, our books, we read just like they read,
They read just like, yeah.
All these schools are the same. But you made a great point. One of the things I think that people look at is resources and money. And like, man, them HBCUs, man, they ain't got no resources and they don't got no money. Well, one of the reasons, I think, and I think you touched on it, was when you look back at athletics. The biggest driver of most universities is their athletic programs, specifically the football programs. And if the big football programs, Alabama, Florida State, their kids are black. Like their football team is, 70% black, if not higher. And don't even go on their basketball team if they have a good program. You look at UNC, Duke, all of those, now you're looking at 90% black. And so money-wise, had we chosen to stay, then the money and the economics when it comes to those schools would be a little different. And I think the ball game would be a little different. And so, you look at it like that, like we hurt ourselves in a sense. But my next question basically is, outside of the school, once you've graduated from school, everybody has a connection back to their school. What's different about our connections when you're talking about an HBCU and your connection back to your school versus, you can even, you have a good example, you have your brother, how connected he is to his university and how connected you are to your university when you are, almost 20 years out.
Well, there are some fun factors and there are some professional factors. And sometimes they intertwine with each other, they mix. And one thing about, we can say for the MEAC, the CIAA, SWAC, SEAC, all of the HBCU conferences, one thing that will be endless is the trash talk. Because all the schools are the same. They all have their individual cultures, but the culture overall is the same. And the colors are different. The mascots are different. I'll go back to the fun part later. I started with the fun, but professionally, when you go out, I'm a teacher, and because of those conferences, because of the HBCU culture, when a person that went to Bethune-Cookman University sees a resume, somebody applying for their, a job, and they see Florida A&M on it, they're like, I know this might be a good fit, although their basketball team is trash. But I'm going to talk to them because we are rivals. Number one, I know the culture of their school and we respect that culture and we respect that school historically and culturally. So, and I've interviewed, I was interviewing a teacher a few years back, and I saw Elizabeth City State on the man's resume. And, I asked a few questions about what's your philosophy on education and all of that stuff that you're supposed to have, supposed to ask when doing the interview. And shortly after, I said it so seriously. I said, hey, we took y'all down in that step show pretty bad about 10 years ago. Were you there? It was embarrassing for y'all. And, and he was like, oh, man, I remember that. Y'all did this. And we just having a social, fun conversation. And the respect was automatically there. It's like a fraternity among fraternities. It's like we can talk about something that somebody that went to UNC can't. Right. And and what you do notice is just a huge respect factor because you just eye HBCUs. It. It's like everything's in black and white on a resume. But if I see Norfolk State, if I see Virginia Union, if I see Jackson State, if I see Livingstone, if I see Bowie State, my eyes is going to be like it's bolded in red, and I'm going to notice it immediately. That's the first thing I look at when looking at resumes. where did this person go to school?
I think you made a good point. I kind of think of it, if you were somebody who were just poor and you came from a really poor neighborhood, economically,
Mm-hmm.
and you made it out, and then you met somebody years later who also came from that neighborhood, you know that they have a certain level of hustle in them because it's hard to make it out of there. And
Mm-hmm.
not that our schools are poor, and not that our schools are, in some kind of bad situation, but there is an extra level of hustle that you got to get out of an HBCU.
Mm-hmm.
Not to get in, but to get out of it. Because, we don't have the resources, like we said, it's better now than it was then, but standing in those super long lines to get your financial aid straight, or, just things just not working out as far as, we ain't going to go into all the details of the craziness, but we all know that all of these schools have some similarities when it comes down to the crazy. Mm-hmm. And so I know that if you came out of this school and you did that journey, you came out of that journey, that same journey that I came out of, that same journey that people before me came out of. There's a little bit of hustle you automatically have to have.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I mean, it's a culture. It's a culture shock, and for people that, it's a beautiful thing, and it's really, really cool that, it's like I said, it's like a fraternity. Everybody can't talk about it, and everybody hasn't had that experience. So it's like we're amongst ourselves, Yeah.
We got another comment. People must understand the difference between integration and assimilation. HBCUs help Blacks to define themselves. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and speak on that. Because one of the things I do know is when we talk about HBCUs, you are proud to be Black. Like when you come up out of there, or or even if you just go by, you just see us in the band marching by, you all of a sudden hey man, I'm holding my chest a little high. I'm Black.
Mm-hmm.
As it says here, people understand the difference between integration and assimilation. HBCUs help people define themselves. Touch on that.
Yeah, it's HBCUs. They penetrate the person more in terms of social standings, emotional standings. You're not going to have some of the larger HBCUs now might have a class of 100 plus people, but it's usually those classes like a freshman class or something like that. But the professors know you. They know you. They can talk to you. They can call you. I remember when I was doing my senior exit paper, the department head was literally analyzing it and grading it, telling me to go back and do this because when we're finished, it literally is archived in the school library. So it's still there. So it's archived, and they want to make sure it's perfect because people are going to reference it. Mm-hmm. So, and he would not leave me alone. Like, he was annoying, but he knew that, number one, this is my guy. Like, I'm attached to him, he's attached to me. If he comes out with a really poor paper, my name's on it and connected to it too. So, but I also want him to produce the best that he can produce. So he guided me, and he told me little things that somebody, if somebody had 100 students, reading 100 papers, they wouldn't give that much attention to. He would call me when he's at home. He had kind of like, Stephen, paragraph 4 on page 5. And I'm like, okay, Doc, I got you. So it's you're cared for. You're cared for because the numbers are not large and extensive. You're not just a student with an ID number. You're actually a part of the culture. You're attached to the professors. And I still have relationships with them now. I can call quite a few of my professors and just say, hey, what's going on? And how you doing? My band director, of course. I mean, the band culture, it's intimate. And all schools don't have that intimacy where you actually feel that you are a family member or a part of something that's bigger than you.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've really run through a lot of our time in the sense of, as we talked earlier, today is the 1-year anniversary of Floyd stuff. And we look at HBCUs and the connection between the fight that we are fighting and HBCUs and the fight that they fought over the years. And instead, we don't have time to really go through it. But anybody listening or watching, if you can, and if you don't know, you can definitely just take a little look when you're looking back and you're seeing the fight. When you're looking and you're seeing the civil rights movement, see where the HBCUs fell into play there. And the lives that were lost at HBCUs, specifically North Carolina, we think about. But the how important is it, or how do you feel is it important that the HBCUs produce the next leaders that are going to continue to push along this fight, that are going to continue to push along social justice? Even looking at it this last year, 2020, as you looked at in Atlanta, some of the strong activism and some of the stronger protests down there were led by students in their group, that Clark area, that Morehouse area, that Spelman area, that they were really out there and out front because that's the training ground and that's what they were built to do. As we wrap up, just talk about the importance of HBCUs when it comes to the movement, the culture.
I mean, it's been HBCUs have been a part of the movement since their existence, since the birth of them, and some of the greatest leaders have come from HBCUs, and I believe the kids are doing a great job. Uplifting their voice and trying to, go into that lane of change, merge into that lane of change. And they're actually being the leaders, and we're actually watching them do it, which is an amazing thing. So, what needs to continue to happen and what needs to happen more, and it kind of has been a little shift. We need more of our kids to go to HBCUs. And, things trend all the time on social media, on the news, and things just fall off. Like it's cool, it's hot one day, then it's not as important the next day. And what we need to do, we need to keep the fire burning for HBCUs, so we can continue to produce those leaders. And they have the culture behind them, they have the staff behind them, they have the professors and doctors behind them that can push them and do it the right way. And they're not just out shouting change, change, change. They're actually shouting change and actually going back to their universities, going back to their homes, going to their jobs, and they're actually doing the work to make the change. They're voting now. More children, more college students are voting. More college students are looking to actually pursue politics. And you can't get any better at it. You can't, get any better than that HBCU. And I would employ everybody that has a student in high school, even middle school, start talking to them about it. I remember my mom was doing grad school work in the late 80s, early 90s, and she was at Virginia State. And my brother and my dad, we were going to pick her up because she had to stay there for like a week and a half or something like that. Man, I saw that band come down the street, man, for a football game. It was August. I was like, I didn't know what to do with myself. And then the BET special came out a few years later about the bands. That's extremely that was really popular at the time. I'm like, I saw School Days. I had to sneak and watch it, but I saw School Days. So I was like, that's what I'm doing. And then learning about where my mom went to school at St. Paul's College, where my dad went to school at Virginia Union. I was like, okay, it's embedded in me. I have to go. I have to taste that culture. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made, going to Johnson C. Smith University. So I just, we just have to keep our kids going. We have to tell our kids that are the superstars in high school, the Dukes and all the Carolinas and the Kentuckys, if they're chasing them down, they need to go to Bethune-Cookman. They need to go to Norfolk State. They need to go to Johnson C. Smith. They need to go, because if they're that outstanding of an athlete, doesn't matter if it's an HBCU Division 1, 2, or 3, they will find you. And not only will they find you, you will go to the league, you will be successful, and you're putting your HBCU on the map, and more students will enroll, and we will have more money, we'll have more income, and we can do more to uplift our community and continue the culture. And but that's just hey, what if LeBron James went to Lincoln or Cheney or Bowie State?
Yeah.
What if? I mean, it's always a what if, but just because of how society is, you got to go here to be successful. You got to go here. No, if you put the work in and you're great, the NBA will find you. The NFL will find you. That graduate school, that medical school will find you. So it doesn't, it's not just about athletics. It's about what, field a person wants to get in. The greatest foundation, in my opinion, is HBCU if you're African American.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's not just it. When you look at our vice president. And so,
boom.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate your conversation. I'll tell you this, as a parent, I think we all, as an African American parent, as a Black parent, I know my responsibility is this. And to my son, you can go to whatever college you want to go to. But when it comes time to visit, you go visit. And
you will visit.
Right. I mean, you can choose what you want, but you go visit one at least.
Yes.
So,
That's what. Yeah. I mean, hey, that's what's got to happen.
We need to have, man. You gonna go. So,
yep.
All right, man. I appreciate you joining us. This was a great conversation. To all of those who chimed in, to all of those who are watching, thank you again. Please continue to watch us, and thank you for your support of this show. What's coming up? We're going to go and talk deep into some of these social justice issues. What's also coming up, we're going to talk about the N-word. We are. We're not going to say it probably, but we're going to talk about it. So please continue to join us. We'll be here next week, and every week after that.
That is what you guys. This is what it's about. Man. This is
All
what
right.
it's about.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody. Please join us again. Good night.